today there's not an opening, tomorrow there is. And you need to be prepared for it. You can't prepare tomorrow.
Welcome, everyone, to the Driving Vision podcast brought to you by the Zeigler Auto Group. And here with me, Auto Group Director of Talent Development, Mike Van Ryn. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Sam.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, like it if you do, and leave a comment. So, Ariah, there's a group that you're working on that you have put together, and I am not invited to the group, and I'm feeling very jealous, and I'm wanting to know, why have I not gotten an invitation to your latest group? Will you tell us about it, please, and why you came up with this, and why I'm not invited?
Well, not that you're not invited. Okay. So let's back up. So it's been on my heart for a while. In the last couple of years of helping out with our training and development pieces inside the auto group, I was starting to notice a significant amount of a need for a group of women to be able to come together, and a space where traditionally has not always been there in our industry, for being sort of male dominated, right? So we have recently kicked off our leadership coaching series calls of women leaders of the ZAG.
So I love that you're doing this. On our social media pages, we had a quote of me talking about how the auto industry is one of the greatest last American institutions. You can come here with any background. It doesn't matter religion, ethnicity, doesn't matter where you're from, who you are. If you're willing to work hard, you'll have success. And somebody posted angrily, they said, well, women are underrepresented in this industry, which is fascinating because it's true, right? Like, what percent did you say are women in automotive overall?
Yeah, so I think right now, and what the stat most recently over the last year was around 21.8% of our industry are female. And very subsequently with our auto group, we have around roughly 20% females inside our organization. So while what you're saying was 100%, our means to wanting to start something like this wasn't just for the aspect of saying, oh gosh, we're misrepresented, right? It was an opportunity for us to say, hey, we know that this is a statistic. This is a perfect opportunity for us to create a space that allows women to come together and have conversations and learn from other females, who've maybe been in this industry or even different walks of business and walks of life to just learn from. So our mission in entirely creating this new series of coaching calls was really to empower and champion all women of our organization through these different leadership topics and conversations, speakers that just help us connect and engage and be educated and feel more inspired to do our best here at Zeigler. So it has just recently taken off. We've had 2 calls so far. Our goal is to really do kind of a rotating every other month, 1-hour Zoom call that reaches every single one of the females in our auto group that want to be a part of the conversation. So it is up and moving, and it's been a few short months.
It's awesome. It makes sense. We have calls and groups for finance managers, for salespeople, for general managers, for all different roles and kind of categories within the auto group, and we support each other.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what you're
absolutely.
doing with this. What's your goal with this group, Ariah, as you meet once a
Yeah,
month?
absolutely. So I think really, like, ultimately, as more women continue to take on different leadership roles in this industry inside Zeigler Auto Group, we just really feel that it's so paramount to have a space for women to be able to grow and be able to network and encourage and support and collaborate in different ways that maybe the conversations wouldn't have be the same in larger group settings across the auto group. So ultimately, my goal and my vision is to continue to keep creating a space that allows women to come from any position inside our organization to come together and learn from each other and lean on each other for support and direction in certain instances that they would face inside our industry or just in work or life in general,
I
and
love
continue
that.
to keep seeing that grow. I have a grandiose vision to see this turn into something that even hits other female leaders outside of our organization. So
Mm.
ultimately, it's been really fun to kick this series off, and really get the buy-in too from our other leaders inside the organization. Aaron Zeigler and Mike Van Ryn both kicked off the first call that we had. So really great to see their support in such a great, powerful thing that we're doing here. So Yeah, been fun.
So so we guys are not invited to this, which is fine because what's neat is you're going to actually bring people, female leaders and participants from across the auto group onto the podcast, and we'll have what you're going to join us into those conversations. Why bring that to our podcast audience? What benefit does it give to the rest of us to be able to see the conversation, the narrative that's going on in that group?
Well, I think I just go back to thinking the conversations sometimes hit a little bit differently. And I don't know if you know this, but we're built a little different than you males, right? But
I'm
not in a
shocked.
way,
No.
yeah, not in a way that's condescending or better than you
Right.
or whatever, right? It's a
It
matter
could
of
be.
just bringing different perspectives of
Yeah.
business in life and in conversation and relationships. I think that's just such an important piece to be able to share with other industries and share with the world. That element is there that maybe doesn't always get the voice for.
It is interesting. In our world, we always talk about how there's strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has different areas that they lean into and they contribute to the auto group. They contribute to business. And
Hmm.
that's probably true equally with the group you're talking to, right?
Hmm.
That by not everybody has a voice that they
Hmm.
should have to put their strengths out there. Do you find sometimes with women in the auto industry representing 20%, do you find
Hmm.
sometimes there's less of a voice and maybe this group helps to create that voice and help
Absolutely.
extend that influence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that the word that's coming to mind for me is just simply empowerment, right? And I think that when you put a group of women together, not in a huge room with a group of men as well, they feel a little bit more inclined to want to speak up and help build that confidence in maybe a smaller group setting. And I think that's okay. I think that's something that people are like, well, gosh, what does it mean? It doesn't matter that you're a female, you should still be able to speak up, right? But the reality is that the conversation is just simply a little different, and in doing this it sets the tone for people who might feel so less inclined to want to speak up, to be able to feel empowered to speak and have a voice, and then be able to grow from there, right? So it's such a great pivotal kind of stepping stone for a lot of women in our auto group, and to be able to learn and hear from other leaders in the organization that have been in their shoes at one time, right? I think about my own story and thinking, I look back and being in this industry for almost 17 years and looking back, and gosh, 10 years ago, I wasn't where I am today. And I think I have been able to grow because of the relationships that I have built, not only just with females, but the men in our organization as well, which has been wonderful. So this just creates kind of a smaller scale opportunity to bring women together and have those conversations to feel empowered.
And by the way, one of the things I love, so our audience is about to hear an interview that you did with Carrie Ann Thomas. I was able to sit backstage and listen to it.
Yeah.
This group is not a group that's sitting around saying, woe is me. I'm
No, not
only
at all.
20% of a
Yeah.
workforce. Carrie Ann Thomas is the only person in the auto group authorized to carry a gun at all
Yes.
times.
Yes.
And she was a police chief in an area in an industry where that industry is less represented than auto. And she'll talk about, you're going to hear in a few minutes, how early on in her career she actually had to change in a janitorial closet because there wasn't a place kind of set aside for a female chief, or let alone a female police officer. And so I'm
Yeah.
excited as I listened to that interview you did with her, which was just awesome. Our audience is about to hear it. I'm
Yeah.
excited for everyone to be able to see the narrative and the conversation, because it's not from a position of hey, we're 20%. It's from a position of there is strength when we have a voice and we're able to extend that influence. Don't what are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
absolutely, and I think what you're hitting on, and I am very much the person when I started thinking about this series of calls to create. I didn't want to match the agenda of like, oh gosh, woe is me, I'm a female, I have no opportunities, because that is not me, and that's not the
No.
message that we want to send, right? So the message
Yeah.
really was clear to create a space and just learn from each other. So I think that's such an important piece to add this element to our leadership and development kind of platform, is being able to provide that space and not feel like we have to be limited by whatever limitations we want to put on ourselves, whether that's your gender, your race, your ethnicity, or, all of the different things that we talk about that can be limitations. It's a matter of just bringing us together and having good conversations in order to just connect and engage and inspire each other. for sure.
All right. So if I'm listening to this interview right now and I want to join your group, I can't join again, but if someone out there is listening and wants to join the group, how could they join, Ariah? Is it open to women across the auto group?
Absolutely. And so, we started this thing small. I had 6 people in kind of a core conversation that I leaned
Mm.
into for advice and kind of brainstorming of what this should look like. And we slowly but surely have continued to keep adding on people who want to keep joining. And so ultimately, I would say if you're listening to this and part of Team Zeigler and want to be a part of these future conversations, they are completely optional for you to come join us. Ultimately, we'd like to continue to keep recapping the calls that allow you to kind of listen into, what was some of the main points and join that way. But want to be a part of the live conversation, just simply reach out to me. We'd be more than happy to welcome you in open arms to join the conversation.
I love this. As part of Team Ziegler, and we're all part of this team, we know we are stronger together. And this is a great way for an important group within Team Ziegler to come together, to learn together, to commit together, to challenge each other, to have a voice and to give back in super meaningful ways. We're excited to see the outcome of this as you progress down the road. We're excited to hear the interviews that you bring forth over the coming months. And we're excited, Ariah, here in just moments on the Future of Zag Today Driving Vision podcast to hear your premiere interview with Zeigler Director of Security, Carrie Ann Thomas. Any closing comments on that, Ariah?
Yeah, I think just if anything, just such a great reminder that we're part of such a great organization that allows the opportunity in a platform like this, and something that's I was passionate about and genuinely wanted to bring everyone together is now underway, and so excited to see it grow, excited to see who we bring in to speak and learn from. And continue to just keep engaging and inspiring and coaching a new set of leaders coming into the industry.
All right. Before we roll the interview, though, I have one last question. It's a risk to try something new. And
Yeah.
some ideas are bigger risk than other ideas, but something like this could be because it could go off the rails, it could turn negative, nobody could decide to participate. What were your thoughts as you were like, hey, should I do this? Can I have this voice? Can I bring this group together? Is it worthwhile to do? What kind of pushed you over the edge of risk to say, hey, this is worthwhile, this is worth doing? I mean, I have no doubt after listening to your interview, and our audience will in a moment, that it's worth it. But what was the thought in your head as you went through the
So all
process?
of those emotions, Sam, everything that you just mentioned ran through my head, the judgment, the fear of it not working. At the end of the day, I knew that what we were doing and being intentional about it and genuinely interested in the growth of others is where my heart lies. And so I knew that I was coming into this with really good intentions to know, like, I just want to help people grow. I want people to not feel alone and know that they can also have a voice and feel empowered to speak up and have these conversations and learn from each other. So all of those emotions, yes, I went through everything, every self-doubt that I could have. But ultimately, it's such an innate nature for me to want to take risks like that in order to just be a better force for good in the world. So
We're glad you silenced the critic. You stood tall in the arena, and to Team Ziegler and to our Driving Vision podcast, we're excited to turn now to the premiere interview with Ariah Daniels talking with Carrie Ann Thomas, Zeigler Auto Group Director of Security. Thank you, Ariah.
thanks so much, Sam. Well, hello, Team Zeigler and friends of the ZAG. Welcome to this extra special episode of our podcast. Here today with me, our Director of Security of Zeigler Auto Group, Carrie Ann Thomas. Carrie Ann, thank you so much for joining today. So we've got some really exciting things going on around the auto group right now, and specifically on the training and development piece side of things. We recently kicked off a new series of leadership coaching calls specifically for the women of our auto group. And so Women Leaders of the ZAG series has now had a few calls. And this is something that we just recently started in order to provide a space for women in our auto group to come together to help champion and empower each other. And what in this group, what we've really tried to create is a space for everyone to come together to learn from different leaders across the organization and connect in a space that allows them to grow personally and professionally. So it's been such a wonderful thing, something I know that's been on my heart to do for a while. And with me, Carrie Ann Thomas was kind of voluntold. I hate to say,
I didn't say no. I didn't say no.
She didn't say no. So, in a part of these series, what we're looking for is to ask one of our female leaders in the organization to come share just a little bit about their story and think about a topic that makes them who they are, that they can share with others in the auto group. And so, this last week, which thank you, Carrie Ann, for joining. And I know still undergoing some sickness there, but still plan to join us, which was awesome. Spend some time talking with us. So Carrie Ann, I just wanted to introduce you and maybe give a little bit of a background on who you are and where you've come from in joining Zeigler Auto Group.
Thanks, Ariah. And I just want to thank Ariah for inviting me to speak to the group. And, we all have our own story to tell, and everyone out there and on those calls we're finding is going to have a story. But I wanted to start it out, hopefully, to give everyone the confidence that this is a safe space. We want to hear what you have to share. And the more of us that do that, those that maybe are hesitant will do that in the future. And so that's why I was eager to help out and do it. I have a long career in male-dominated fields. I was in the Army and then in law enforcement and firefighting for my entire life. And now I'm, in this another male-dominated industry. So I have a lot of experiences throughout my career of how to be successful, how to survive it, how to have a voice, and try to figure out, how you want to move your career forward and where you want that to go. And I consider myself very fortunate to have landed in I call it my chapter 2, right? Got my chapter 1 behind me here at Zeigler Auto Group and able to contribute, with all the skills I've picked up. We're not born with these skills, but we grow, and we're able to grow in our profession and personally by doing these sort of things. And I've had a lot of those experiences, and I'm always happy to share on some stories that can be told in a group like this, and some are better told over a beer, but I got them all. Yeah.
Well, too fun. And it's interesting, Carrie Ann, because, when I was thinking about who would I want to have come kick off some of these calls with us, and, I thought of you and your background, and this is something that we didn't really start the conversation of saying like, hey, like, where are we not, represented as a female in our organization? And that was not the case. Really, it was just a matter of like, we are in a male dominated industry, and really it's like the numbers is a good, like only 20% females, right? And so the conversations are just a little bit different when you get a group of women together to have those conversations, to have those kind of like-minded experiences that we've had. But ultimately to not allow that to be a barrier in our successes. And so that's been really cool. And I was thinking immediately of you because of your background in the military and on the police force. So I think it was just such an important piece to have you come share like, hey, there are no boundaries. You can do whatever it is that you want, regardless of where you are. So I think that was such an important piece and an interesting one to start with.
I just want to say, because you've never told me that statistic, 20% of our organization is female. That's the highest percentage of female of any organization I've ever belonged to. Yeah. It's like, whoa, we're moving up there.
You're moving up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to define or separate ourselves because we are female employees in this industry.
Absolutely.
We just need a space to figure out how to operate at our best, right? And we can do that with peer support. Absolutely. And having those. And we'll probably talk about this later, and I mentioned it on the call. But spending almost 30 years in law enforcement, when I first started, right, very few females, and even not a lot today. Right. But I never had peer support because there just weren't women out there in the same positions and at the same ranks I was.
Sure. Right.
And I wish I had, and I did get some peer support later in my career, but it came from other female chiefs throughout the country, not nearby. And once I had that, it really made a difference. Yeah. In helping me handle some of the situations I had to handle. So I realize right now that, it's up to us who have had opportunities and where we stand to open doors for others,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Yep.
once the door's open, they can walk through.
Well, and that's the huge part of this leadership journey, right? Is being able to know and use your story and use your journey as fuel to help other people see, like, hey, you're not alone. Like you can move in any direction you want, regardless of whatever barriers you think are in the way, because they aren't barriers. They're just they're opportunities to overcome. And I think that's so important. And one thing I thought this was really funny when you shared, and you've shared this with me before, is that when you had first joined the force, that you didn't have a locker room of your own. So there wasn't a female locker room. So they made you dress in a closet. Is that right?
Oh yeah, me and the mop and the bucket. Yeah, yeah. But you know what? You did, and I wasn't drafted, right? This is what
Right.
I chose to do, and I knew there were going to be hurdles.
Yep.
Man, and the best way is just use your sense of humor and then figure out how to fix it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Figure out, do what you got to do, because bitching about it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, have a good sense of humor and figure out how you're going to fix it, and so that no one in the future ever tells you that story of they started that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're jumping into kind of the conversation of really what you're hitting home right now. And those are your own core pillars, right? You're utilizing the core pillars of your being to be successful in any span of your control, which I think is so important. So that was the topic of this conversation that we had in this coaching call, which, by the way, was an hour call, which we had a good 40 of our women leaders across the auto group on this Zoom call altogether, which was awesome. And we only continue to keep seeing these grow. And that's at least my vision for it, and move it into a capacity where it even reaches others, maybe even outside of our organization. So I think that's such a cool piece. But so going into this topic, I really just want to kind of recap what we talked about and the important pieces that really came out of the conversation, and just talk a little bit about those. So when we brainstormed initially about what do we want to talk about, you immediately were like, hey, like, I'd love to talk about my core pillars of success. What is it about my values, the things that drive me, that keep me moving in the direction of where I want to go and being successful? And then one of our questions was, how do you use those core pillars when you get off track in order to kind of get back on track? And so I want to just have that kind of conversation. So I guess first, let's just, ask you and open you up to, what are your core pillars? What has made you be successful in your career, not only just here at Zeigler, but in years past?
When we did talk about it, I was eager because it takes you a lifetime to figure these things out, right? I didn't wake up, and when I started in the Army at 18 and say, hey, here's the 4 things that really I know are going to make me successful and I believe in, right? You grow into those.
Right, yeah.
And when you look back and have to lean on some things during tough times, that's when you figure it out. And so when I thought my core pillars, it was confidence, consistency, always willing to do more, and then genuinely curious, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, I was in some situations, as a 19-year-old private, that I had zero confidence, right? And watching other people who did, I knew I needed that, right? And so figuring out in those, and I said this on the call, right? As I got into roles where my span of control increased, until, at the end I was the chief, man, had to be confident. You had to be on 24/7, and you had to, fake it until you make it. And what do you need to be confident? No one should ever know you're not.
Yeah.
Right. But when you have those peer support groups and groups like this, that going into something tough, that you can have those calls like, oh, I got to do this today and it's really going to suck, or I got to, whatever it may be. And I've had the extremes, right?
Yeah.
But having that confidence, because people give you that confidence back, right? You feel that same feeling back.
Yeah.
And, and I learned one thing really early as I became an officer in the Army, and I had a trainer who once said, right, wrong, indifferent, just make a decision.
Yeah.
And I lived by that, and that comes in the confidence, right? You're never going to make all the right decisions.
Exactly.
Ever.
Well, I think confidence is obviously something that's built as you do things that are uncomfortable. You don't have that confidence, and when you come through on the other side and realize that you've done it, is when that confidence gets boosted. And I think that's such an important piece to remember, that in your journey,
because then you fall back on that and say, hey, if I made it through that, whatever the situation is, right? It's like, well, I can make it through this,
right?
Or at least it's never as bad as I think it's going to be. So yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And then when we look at another one was consistency, right? And what I always did not like about leaders or people that I had to work for was wishy washy, right? It's like, oh, what side of the fence are they going to
Right.
flop
Oh
on
yeah.
today?
Yeah.
And I'm just a very decisive person, and I always tried to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone always knew what I was going to do. They knew they weren't going to like it a lot of times, but I was very
You were
consistent.
consistent.
And
Yeah.
because of that consistency, when I had to make the tough call or do really tough things, I knew in my mind that, hey, in my heart, I don't want to do this and I have to, but everyone knows I'm going to, and I have to be consistent.
Yeah.
Because consistency in a leader helps the organization, right? You can't go back and forth, and our hearts lead us different places than our heads, and so you have to have that pillar to lean on.
That is so powerful. And one I think is just goes back to what you're saying is like you've developed that over time. And that became really powerful, everyone on the call too. I think to understand that like, hey, some people they may not even know what their pillars are. They may not know exactly who they are and they might be evolving and morphing right now. And to know and appreciate that those can be developed over time, I think was an important piece that we really took away from that question. Where people just realize like, okay, like what maybe my core pillars are today probably weren't what they were 5 years ago and 5 years ahead. They're constantly evolving and helping you grow as a person. So I think that was a really cool piece to uncover that on this call.
Especially when I saw so many young women right on the call and new to the industry, a lot of them new in their positions.
Yes.
It's sort of nice to know as you're trying to herd the kittens in your own worlds. Know that you do come out the other side. There is light at the other side.
Yeah.
And and I always say it doesn't matter your position, right? We all have our own span of control.
Mm-hmm.
Whether your span of control is the titles on your desk, whether it's the cars, the vehicles, whatever it is, your span of control, be the very best you can be at your span of control, because that prepares you for a greater span of control.
Oh, that was such a strong piece too. I really loved that. The other thing that came up for me, I think too, to hit along that lines is, being in your span of control and being the best you can be at that particular thing, but also going back to, and a couple people said it in their answers to this question, about just being radically authentic to themselves and being radically authentic and good at what they know that they're capable of, but also being loyal to that person first, being loyal to yourself first before you try to jump into helping serve anyone else, right? And I think that was such a cool piece, because I look at that and I think people are really finding their why and their passion and who they are, before they jump into some of those things. And sometimes, and we encourage this so much within Team Zeigler, is like, if you don't feel like you're in the right fit of a position somewhere, we want to really help you expand on your talents and your strengths that make you good at what you do. And so maybe we might put you in another role that you thrive and shine in. So I think there's kind of a dynamic there with that, is that you're in control of whatever your span is, but you have the opportunity to grow or pivot into a different direction, which is something we heavily promote here. So I appreciated that.
Yeah. And I think that feeds into one of the other pillars, was genuinely curious. And what I mean by that is always have the willingness to learn and ask questions, and even things that are out of your scope. So because you want to have that knowledge base, right?
Absolutely.
And when you say, hey, if I'm not a good fit here,
Yep.
But if you're curious about learning everything there is in this industry, you're going to be prepared when the time comes.
Yeah.
I always tell people, when you talk to people coming up, it's like, hey, don't figure out what you want to do, and when it happens, go get prepared. Your life's a job interview, right? You should be preparing all the time. So when and we all know how this goes, right? Today there's not an opening, tomorrow there is. And you need to be prepared for it. You can't prepare tomorrow.
Oh, 100%. And so you and I share that same pillar. So in certain personality profiles and things that I've taken, or Strengths Finder, they also call it learner. So one of my top strengths is learner. I'm constantly curious about new things and wanting to just soak any and every information I can get. That just makes me a little bit more valuable, like you're saying, in different spans of control. So I think that's an interesting piece that both of us share in common. And it goes to show, I guess, from my background too, I'll be 17 years with Zeigler Auto Group in November. And I look back at myself 15 years ago and think, gosh, I would have never expected to grow in the capacity that I have, or have been given the opportunity to learn new things. And I've loved every minute of it. So that's such an important piece. And I think one that anyone can adapt, right? You've just got to be willing to want to learn. So I love that.
Yes. And not think you not never gonna have the mentality, I don't want to do it because it's not my job.
Right.
Or the only thing I'm responsible for is what's in front of me. No, we all wear that Ziegler right on our shirts, right?
Yeah.
We're responsible for whatever we're asked to do. And some things we do really well and some we don't even know how to do yet.
Yeah.
So we can't have that mentality, it's not my job.
Oh, such a good point. This takes me to the third question, and just kind of moving towards the end of the conversation that we had in our call. But one of the questions we asked was, when you find yourself getting off course, how do you recenter yourself? And I've got to go quote. So our BDC sales manager in Subaru of Cherville, Jalen Dunn, she said she will look at herself in the mirror and ask herself, are you doing your best? And if that answer is no, then she knows to repivot and do what she needs to do to put her head back down and push past it and do what she needs to do. Or if the answer was yes, then it's like, okay, give yourself a little bit of grace. Don't be so hard on yourself. Because I think a lot of us, especially women in this industry, we place a lot more pressure on ourselves because we think like we've got something else to prove. But ultimately, I mean, so everyone does, right? And I think that's such a important piece, is to do some self-reflection and say, hey, am I really doing my best, or could I be doing more? And am I limiting myself? So I think that was such a cool quote.
It's such a mature answer, right?
Yeah.
To be able to say, hey, I need to ask myself, am I doing my best? Yeah. Right? I've never said to myself, am I doing my best? I'm always, you know what I mean? But I always have regrets, right? And so, I always remember going home every night going, oh man, walking out of the building and just in my head going through only my regrets, never my successes, right? Because we're human, right? And we always want to do better. And I always manage my regrets as that productive self-reflection, because I had to tell myself, like, listen, you kicked ass today. So what if these two things went wrong? Like, how are you going to not have those two things go wrong tomorrow? Things that are within your control. Mm-hmm. So use those regrets to build yourself back up, because otherwise, you're kicking yourself all the time, because it's so easy to fall into that, man, I wish I wasn't doing better. Somebody else got the position, I didn't. It must be because of this. And we can't let that take over. And by being in this group and hearing other people say that, that gives you an opportunity to come up with a new skill set. And I read through those answers before we had the call, Ariah, and there was a couple things in there. It's like, that's a dang good idea. Yeah. I'm going to try that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's what it's all about, right? Is being able to collaborate and hear everyone's message and take those different ideas to just help you grow and become stronger. So I think that's such an important piece. So what's one that I feel like, if you were to look back at every single one of your pillars, Carrie Ann, and when you find yourself getting off track, what's the one that you really go to, or specific ideas that you lean on when you're in kind of that rut?
I sort of know when I'm starting to wander and I got to put myself back in the zone. But I also have to say to myself, why am I doing, what I do? And it's consistent. I'm going to come out and do it confidently, even if I don't know if it's the right thing to do. Because we're allowed to make mistakes, but always have an answer of why you did what you did, right? And if at the end it was the wrong answer, you should be able to explain to someone, why you did what you did. But I think it's just coming back to these pillars, and we did 4 pillars. I really have a 5th, and that's valuing people, right? I love people. I'm a people person, and people used to ask me when I was the chief, it's like, hey, do you like being the chief? And I go, well, I like people and I like problem solving. So I got plenty of both. But really, and I look back at all the positions I've had and opportunities I've had, and it was always because I love people and problem solving, and the problems always changed. Mm-hmm. And when I got the call here at Zeigler, it was for the problem solving, right? And then I got to meet a great group of people, and I love it here because of the people, and I love it here because it's constant problem solving.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's really great, and great answers and ones to lean on. Some other ones that I think just specifically to give some other ideas to everyone listening, we talked a lot about sitting to do some reflection. We had someone say, they sit and assess and make adjustments, and then they stay mindful. And I think mindfulness is such an important piece too, is making sure that you're just doing some continuous monitoring of yourself and living authentically according to your core pillars. That was a great takeaway. Someone also said, hey, I go take a walk, right? And I think that's one that I lean into. I love health and fitness, and I always say that it's what helps keep me sane. So I know that if I feel myself getting off track, or if I'm feeling anxious or depressed or sad or angry, like I always lean into go move my body. And there's so much power in being able to just move your body to help support your mind. So that was one that came up. Another gal, I'll call on Diane Johnson from our Hoffman Estates team, one of our controllers there. She mentioned she's got a plaque on her wall. She actually has a couple of plaques on her wall. We talked a little bit about some of the things that she looks at in quotes that help her get grounded. And some of them, one of them said, just breathe. So one of the plaques on her walls just says, just breathe. And so that gives her a cue to just say, okay, let's just pause for a second, take a minute to slow down, self-reflect. And so I thought that was a really cool one. It was kind of funny. You and I joked around. Someone said they go light a candle, and we're like, oh gosh, let's not light a candle.
I'm like, don't light a candle in one of our buildings. Give a candle warmer. Yeah. The firefighter in me came out. Yeah.
But that's part of that mindful piece, which is funny. But meditation, like doing what you can to really slow yourself down, give yourself some grace and recenter yourself, I think are really important ones. So lots of really great things that came out of that specific question and this conversation. So
it was just a great call. So much input, right? And you could just feel like everyone was on the same sheet of music and was learning, but we were all at different places, right? And very, very productive. The hour went by like that. And I just can't wait to see how this grows, right? Yeah. And really, and when we come together and then we talk about how much we've talked offline until the next call, right? That's a sure sign of success. Yeah. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. I appreciate that you brought me in here at the beginning. And now I can sit back and just light some candles and
maybe go for a walk instead. Oh, too funny. Exactly. Well, such powerful points. And one that it's coming up for me right now. I think about one of our Zeigler University guest speakers, Jimmy Yeary, really ended a conversation with us a few months ago talking about sharing your story. And I think that's such an important piece to hear your story, to hear where you've come from, to know that people don't feel alone. Like you have faced just as much as, I have faced just as much and maybe different capacities, and you have faced different capacities, but to know at the end of the day, to get through those and lean in on who you are and your values and those pillars of success to carry you through, I think was such an important message for everyone on the call. So I couldn't have said it better. I'm really excited to continue to keep growing this series and invite different speakers to the conversation so that we can be educated and learn from and share different ideas on just becoming a better human being personally and professionally here at Zeigler. So thank you so much for your time today. And if I accidentally tell you to volunteer again for a certain topic, you won't be surprised, will you? Okay.
No. I'll help out any way I can. And I just want to say too, and I said this on the call, if anybody ever, wants to talk, has more questions, or, just needs somebody to bounce something off, I'm always available. I'm an email or phone number away, and never, ever hesitate.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carrie Ann. Thanks for all you do for the organization.
All right. Thanks, Ariah. Bye.
A special thanks to Ariah Daniels and Carrie Ann Thomas for joining this week's episode. Until next week, how are you driving vision today?